I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Cleveland Heights Community Relations and Recreation Committee. It is 6 o'clock on Monday, March 9th. Present are myself, Joe DeWitt-Foy, Chair, Co-Chair, Councilman Posh, and Committee Member, Councilor Cobb. Also present are Council President Kuda and Council Vice President Larson, as well as Administrator Reese, Director Gonzalez, and members of the community.
Robin.
Big Mouth Robin here.
Thank you.
Did you say Sarah's on?
Oh, and Councilor Stone is remotely. Okay, so we'll jump into the agenda. We wanted to discuss the Youth Scholarship Fund, Youth Recreation Fund, Youth Recreation Donation Fund, otherwise known as. But basically this is a fund that has existed and has received donations from the community with the intention to subsidizing or providing free access to recreation through the city. There has been some challenges in how those funds are dispersed or confusion around what those funds can be used for. So currently, we're really only using those funds for in-house city programming. Which is somewhat limiting in that there's a number of partner nonprofit organizations that provide recreation to Cleveland Heights youth that are currently don't have a way to subsidize or provide access to those opportunities. So that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out. Couple questions that we are trying to understand is if this is the right fund structure, and this is more of a conversation with finance director to ensure that we can both receive funds as donations and then use those for city programming. And then another, if we do decide to move in the direction, and this is a outstanding question with law, but would an RFQ process be the appropriate next step where we're identifying these partner organizations and figuring out a way to pre-screen, evaluate, and pre-approve which organizations that, in addition to Cleveland Heights programming, that we would be able to use. So do you want to provide any background on sort of the challenges with the current system that I left out, or any other insight from your perspective and work with the Recreation Advisory Board?
No, you pretty much hit it on the head. There's just been some disconnect on how the monies can be spent because every year, specifically the Happy 5K, 10K, the money that we raise for that has been going to the Youth Recreation Fund. So it keeps getting bigger and bigger, but the amount of money that we're spending is still small. That's why we're looking at different ways to expand that for youth programming. And I would just go as far as saying, I would love to see it not just for paying registration fees for kids, but the community center also offering some type of programming for children or whatever it is, and using those funds for that as well too. And there's just been this disconnect on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and who controls the money or who authorizes the spending of the money, and that's where we're kind of still waiting for an interpretation from law on how that fund really sits and who can really spend the money and how we can spend the money.
And then I'll just recognize Tom Hotchkiss-Lilly, who's a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and has drafted a draft charter related to the fund. As we're working through some of these issues, some of the charter will no doubt be changed, but it's a good starting point in terms of thinking about how to expand these opportunities. Can you clarify how the current state of, I believe, some funds from the Youth Recreation Donation Fund, I believe is the technical title. Some of those funds were transferred into a Parks and Rec account, and then that is what you're currently spending from, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's revenues and expenditures. So every year, council, in order for us to use those funds, they have to appropriate that into the budget. So that's what gets appropriated every single year into the budget in order for us to do, right now how it sits is internal transfers. So for example, if a kid can't afford to play basketball, but he wants to play basketball, fills out an application, or the parents fill out an application, we approve that person to for their funds to be covered. What ends up happening is that we end up transferring money internally from the youth recreation fund over to the expenditure side of things, and that covers their costs. So it shows that we're still making up the difference in the amount of money. So it's not a freebie. It's still being paid for, but it's just being covered by an internal transfer. So that's the structure that it sits right now. But that amount that we get every year gets appropriated. I asked for an dollar amount, which in the past I think it was always like $5,000 we've asked for out of the $100,000 that's sitting in the account. This year, I upped it and asked for $20,000 because I feel at minimum, since we have so much sitting in the account, that the amount of money that we bring in on a yearly basis from the run itself, we should be at least spending that amount. So on average, we usually bring in about $20,000 for the run each year. So that's how much I asked council for to appropriate this year, and that's how much was appropriated. So we do have about $20,000 sitting there. But right now, it's only being used for internal transfers.
And is there a challenge in expenditures to outside nonprofits, or is it just that's a policy that we need to adjust if we wanted to move in that direction? We would just have to adopt a different internal policy for that.
Well, I think a lot of it is getting clarification from the law department as it exists currently. Because I mean, we may be able to already do that.
Yeah.
It's just we have to get that interpretation from law to say like, this is the fund, this is what it was set up for, this is what you have the ability to do with it, and kind of go from there. So we may already have those capabilities.
Okay.
We just need the interpretation to be able to do that or not.
Got it. And then the next step, I believe, would be to some sort of review of outside nonprofits that are providing these services, and then pre-screen and pre-approve, so that there's not a process where we have to evaluate them on an ongoing basis. We would ask for applications, or maybe that would be an RFQ that the city would release. But any thoughts on best way of moving forward with that?
And I don't even think, to be honest with you, I don't really think it matters about the organization. I think it matters about the people that are participating in the organization. So for example, I mean, if a child wants to participate in urban swimming, we can just use that as an example. As long as they're a Cleveland Heights resident and they're showing that they're participating in a program, I think, we have to set the boundaries on that. But I don't think that we want to limit it to specific nonprofits when there's a lot of our kids that are using a lot of nonprofits around us.
My understanding, and I can clarify this, but my understanding is that there are some differences between nonprofit organizations and for-profit recreation leagues in how the city would be able to use these funds for those types of spending.
Yeah, we have to get
so then yeah,
on that.
so I can clarify that, but that would be one of the things that we would be able to pre-screen. And it's not meant to limit. We could always, we could leave a process open, but to have some way of identifying and knowing which organizations are out there that are, that kids may be eligible for.
Mhm.
Okay, so I will follow up with finance and law to get clarity on those things, and then I can look back with you about whatever the next step would be then.
Sounds great.
Okay, any questions?
Has anyone done any research to find out if there is some enabling legislation that created this youth recreation fund?
I've put an email into law to see if they could do some homework on that, and we haven't got anything back yet.
and I just did a quick search on our website. And I don't know if there's any enabling legislation, but the information says that it's been established to make Cleveland Heights recreation programs more accessible to those children in need. My reading of at least the statement the mission statement and the establishment was that it was limited to Cleveland Heights recreation programs. In other words, those programs that are in our program. And to the extent that we want to use this money for any of these outside programs, I think some enabling legislation needs to do that. We need to run it by the law department to make sure that it's a permissible use of funds. But the funding is all coming from private individuals as opposed to any city money.
Correct.
And in looking at this, there was previously the Cleveland Heights Recreation Advisory Board. Looking at this, it looks like they determined the parameters of this. The Recreation Advisory Board Scholarship Committee, which was comprised of the Cleveland Heights Recreation Advisory Board members. I'm looking at something from 2017.
Yeah, and that's what we.
Did you find that?
Yeah, so there's an
Okay,
application,
yeah.
there's, Tom, if you wanna add anything, but basically we're on a fact-finding mission and we're trying to figure out the history of this, current state, and then how we can, utilize the funds for, beneficial purpose for, youth in Cleveland Heights to access recreation. But these are some of the steps that we're trying to work through.
To the extent that there is prior legislation, we could enact new legislation would repeal anything previously on this subject. Because I'm not sure that we'll find it and draft whatever parameters that you want concerning the use of that money.
Chairman DeWitt Foy, I've always been concerned about this fund, that we raise money every year. When I started in 2022, the balance was at $60,000. And it just kept going higher. And I appreciate you understanding that, how can that be if we're using it for kids, right? How well do you feel it's marketed that there is this opportunity for children who don't have the financial means to be able to participate in these programs?
I think as a Parks and Rec department, we can do a better job of advertising for it, which we will. A lot of that though is we feel like we are handcuffed with just internal programming compared to these outside programs too. So we're kind of careful on our marketing tactics because it's only appealing to internal, and that's why we want to get this all wrapped up so that way we can really understand who we can appeal to, and then really put it out there that, hey, now you can go to Urban Swim or the Eastside Tigers and go play hockey or whatever it is. It's not just limited to our programming.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I would hope that you'd revisit how much you allocate in 27 when you're looking at budget, because I think that money that's been sitting there not used, or at least doesn't appear to have been used, maybe we could put a bit more out there for some kids next year. Thank you.
I agree.
I'm not gonna be on the spot, but I'm thinking, could the school board kind of help with promotions like with guidance counselors and I don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, that just seems like kind of a logical place.
Yeah, it seems like a great place to collaborate.
In the recreation advisory meeting, the one before last, it was discussed, the front desk can automatically give scholarships for people that are in need. Did I hear that right? Because I think accessibility is good, so not filling out a form. If someone comes there and they have a reasonable request.
Well, when it comes to the scholarship, we do make everybody fill out the form.
Okay.
But as it sits right now, we approve it. At one point, it was the advisory committee that was going through all the applications and approving and not approving. That responsibility has since transitioned to our staff, so we can do it pretty quickly and pretty rapidly. And then also look at, you know, a case by case scenario for approval or not approval.
I just remember the days on the school board when you had to fill out an application for free lunch. People ended up not doing that. They didn't feel comfortable filling that out. They didn't feel comfortable providing personal information. I just think we need to be sensitive about that in some way.
And I agree with you, because I think our forms can use a good revamp as well
Right.
too, on the amount of information that's actually put on there, just being sensitive to people's personal lives.
That actually ties into another conversation just about data management and how secure is the data that we are collecting, and best practices to collect as little as needed. So you know, it would be worth looking at the application of that.
I think it's definitely something worth looking into and revamping it for sure.
Tom, did you wanna add anything from the advisory board side? I know you guys have been wrestling with this for a while, and you helped write the proposed charter.
Yeah, so we wrote the charter because we thought we had to do something about it because nothing was being done. Probably in the absence of any law finding of enabling legislation, the city can just, you know, the council can just make something new, which would be probably better. There was a couple things that we put in there that still I think are good ideas, which are both scholarships and grants to our organizations within our umbrella. As well as we actually put in marketing money because this is not well known, right? And we need it to be more widespread. It will be easier once we figure out the organizations, because then they will know, like if we do like a RFQ, if we approve them, they will know, and they have an incentive obviously to refer people to the fund. So at any rate, I appreciate you guys looking into this, and hopefully we can get it going and help the kids, you know, get playing.
So I'll look back with law and finance, and then hopefully by the next advisory board meeting, we'll have some updates, and then we'll at least have a clarity on next steps.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that we have a lot of possibilities with this that'll serve the youth of Cleveland Heights. I mean, for example, like we Monday through Friday at our facility, we have a preschool program. You know, why can't we use it? We don't charge, or if we do, it's very minimal, the admission for that. So why can't we use that money for stuff like that? That's gonna be used towards the youth of our community as well, you know?
Swim lessons.
Yeah,
There's all
exactly right.
sorts of opportunities. Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on to the next topic. So liability insurance needs for coaches and instructors. This has come up in a couple of different areas, both from the senior center and then in recreation, and then also like outside organizations that are using our facilities. So there's a couple different buckets, but I would at least like to have more clarity on what our requirements are. And then from the senior center side, the issue that I've been told is that other cities don't have the same requirements for liability insurance of their instructors, and so it's harder to get instructors to come to our senior center when they could go somewhere else and not have to, you know, get this additional liability insurance. It can certainly make sense if it is a call it swim lessons, that would potentially make more sense than some of these instructors I've heard for things like drawing or, you know, sewing or something like that are also being required to have some liability insurance. So just want to talk through the situation, get a little clarity, and then figure out if there are steps forward to make it easier to bring in you know, more programming.
Yeah, so this is it's a battle that we've been facing as of recent. I guess, I mean, they really haven't had this battle in the past, but we've been instructed by our law department that anybody that's an independent contractor under contract now has to have liability insurance. I think at first it went from if they were doing a physical activity or something like that, and then it morphed and then changed into no, now everybody that's under as an independent contractor has to have liability insurance. And it does become a challenge for us, unfortunately, because we have instructors, for example, that don't charge the city anything. They're free, but we still have a contract with them because it's under our umbrella, and we're still being told that they do have to have liability insurance because there's a contract with them. So it becomes, even instructors that are donating their time, we have to say, but you have to spend money in order to come teach at our facilities. And that's even some of our instructors that we do pay, they make very, very little money. They just love what they do. They get paid a little bit, but then we're saying that you have to have liability insurance now, and that's sometimes a bigger expense than what they're actually making. So they're saying, well, I'm not gonna teach at your facility anymore because it's gonna cost me more. It's gonna cost me money out of pocket to come teach at your facility, and I'm not making up the difference. So we do run into that. Our bigger programs are not so much because they're making a decent buck. But our smaller programs, we do struggle, and we're battling that right now.
Where do you see the issue most frequently? It's not on the recreation side where there are large programs and you can.
It's both. It's both. Like for example, on the recreation side, we have a program called Tango. Tango, the drop-in fee is very minimal. I think it's like if you wanna participate, it's $5 the drop-in session. The instructors don't charge us anything, so they're completely free. They're here for like 3 hours every Saturday or every Sunday. But we're requiring them to get liability insurance because they're teaching a program. It's, stuff like that. So it's both on the community center side and also on the senior center side. Facing it a little bit more on the senior center side because they have more programming that, like you mentioned, a drawing class or a quilting class, different things like that we have instructors, and now we're instructing those people, hey, you have to provide liability insurance, and it's becoming hard to keep or retain those people under contract.
And those are typically smaller scale, fewer participants in those classes, so it's harder to justify the cost of liability insurance there. Okay. Councilor Fosh.
Can we see if other cities have the same policy?
Yeah, I could do some homework and some research.
And maybe kind of a short list of some of the ones that can't, I don't wanna say afford, but they're not gonna proceed with us, that you gotta drop because they're not gonna have the liability insurance.
Yeah, I can do that, and I do wanna say that, it has been law's suggestion at our recommendation of moving some of these people over from independent contractor to payroll, because then they would be covered under the city insurance and whatnot. But it's been difficult to determine which ones we're gonna move over, which ones are we gonna leave as independent contractors. Some of the, instructors, they don't wanna be on payroll, they just wanna be independent contractors. So it's been, so that was law's recommendation regarding some of them. But I can do some homework to see what other cities are doing as well.
Okay, I'm just curious.
It's all on that. But I guess is that, just to finish that point, is that the main difference between the liability insurance that we have for our facilities, for our instructors? If they're an employee, that's all. We cover all of that, but if someone is independent operating out of our facilities, then that needs to be on there.
Yeah, if they're a payroll employee, then they would be covered under the city's insurance umbrella. If they're an independent contractor, then they would have to provide their own liability insurance.
And we want volunteers to have a contract, even if there's no.
Yeah, cause
Exchange of payment.
we have to be on the up and up in our building regardless if they're getting paid or not, so we still wanna have some type of contract in place. Know who's in our building, know how many people are being registered for those programs, all that good stuff.
And then if an organization is renting space, either at a community center or a park, same setup, or how does that work? I guess it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Since they're not, maybe not signing up through the recreation department or senior center, but how would that work?
Yeah, it depends on if it's just a straight rental, like a baby shower
Yeah.
or whatever it is, there's no liability insurance that's required from us. Now, if there's an outside organization that's coming in to put on an event, like for example, in April, we have the Golden Gloves boxing coming in, run by the Cleveland Golden Gloves boxing organization. They're gonna come in and run a full event at our facility. We require them to provide proof of liability insurance and list the city of Cleveland Heights as a rider underneath that. Or as additionally insured.
Okay.
So it just depends on the type of program or event that's going on.
Anyone else on that? Want to talk about Dennison Field access. This has come up a number of times, but my understanding is that the field is locked at baseline. The default is locked, and then it gets unlocked for specific rentals. But that sometimes has been a barrier to teams using it or providing maximal access to the facility. So just wanted to talk through that issue and see if there are different ways that we could approach that in terms of increasing access to this incredible facility that we just invested a lot of money into.
So you're correct. As it sits right now, it is locked, and it's on a rental basis or on a reservation basis that we go in and unlock them. And the reason for that is just protecting our asset, or protecting our big investment that we just did. Now, I think what an alternative could be that we could possibly talk about is like similar to what we do in the community center. It's like open gym times. We can do something like that at Dennison, where we could do open turf times, where we put out a schedule and we say like, hey, during this time to this time, it's going to be open turf. Anybody that wants to come up and kick a soccer ball or throw a football around, or whatever it is, we can work out something like that. But that's not quite in place yet. But that's something that we can definitely work towards. Right now, Mike DeCenzo, he's our gatekeeper of that. He keeps the books on that. So if you need a reservation, you go through him. He keeps he knows when it needs to be opened and closed. So it's a real smooth system for us right now. But if it is something that the public is saying, well, I want access to that as well too, we can come up with like more of like open turf times or something along those, where the public will know that it's going to be open during these times or something.
Yeah, or I mean, is it possible to have, maybe this is the same thing, but just by default open hours, and then there's reservations within that. It opens in the morning, it closes at dusk, something along the that type of scenario, and then it's more restricted when there are reservations, when there are specific events happening there.
Yeah, I mean, we can. It's just like I said, we're trying to preserve and our investment that we did out there. That's why it's not open from sun up to sundown, because I mean, unfortunately, we see a lot of our city buildings and city parking structures that have graffiti on them and different things like that. Those are the types of things that we're trying to avoid by restricting the amount of time that it's open. So I don't know if we want to go the route of that it's going to be open at 6 a.m. and it's going to close at 6 p.m. and bearing whatever, but I am willing to at least start with maybe some like I said, open turf hours, like that are kind of somewhat restricted right now, unless I'm told differently.
Is there always staff present when it's open? Like if there's a reservation?
We try. What we try to do is we try to staff it with during basketball. During summertime we have like open gym attendance in the community center, but then we also have them out at the basketball courts as well too. So we try to do the same thing where we have like park monitors or park floaters
Okay.
that we know that, hey, the turf's open, go swing through, make sure everything's good and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I think putting out a schedule of open turf times feels like a really good balance and a good start to improving access. President Kuda, and then I wanna get
I thought you were asking if the, if it was open from, morning till evening, that it would be reserved by someone, or is that not what you're saying, it was just open?
well, like, we have fields that anyone can go access
Like the
at any
picnic
time.
tables, you reserve the picnic area, and then, cause I don't know if this is a staffing, it's gotta be a staffing consideration, I don't know what if you have enough staff to do this, but that way, like if, let's just say somebody knew they wanted to play soccer for an hour or 2 hours, they had, 10 people or what have you, and they reserved it, then we wouldn't just have staff hanging out just in case people showed up, they'd actually reserve it. That's what I thought you were saying, but if you weren't, I'm gonna toss that out as, an alternative.
But it can always be reserved through, like I said, through our department.
Right,
And those are the times that we do unlock it.
but those are paid,
Correct.
yeah.
But I
With
mean,
an open turf, a specific schedule, call it 5 to 8, a couple days a week, where anyone can just go out and kick ball around or something like that feels like a good balance there.
as long as there's no reservations.
Right.
correct?
Right.
Couple questions, and maybe our school board member knows this. Is the high school turf field held open to the public at all times, do you know?
I was gonna jump in there. You can go to the high school turf at any time almost, I think aside from games, so our policy is that it's a community field that, kids can at any time, unless there's a game, go and play on. And we've never had any significant damage. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate risk analysis.
Sure.
And if you wanted to mitigate that a bit, you could put a turnstile in, something that it can't get large, motorbikes or something in there. The high school is open without a turnstile. We have not seen that, unless maybe Jim can take us further back.
Has there been a request or a stated need for us to open that facility open? Or are you just suggesting that we should do that?
No, that's my understanding is that people have brought that to me, that can be difficult to get access unless it's a pre-planned thing, but like a situation where you show up to play at Denison and the fields are destroyed, they're all muddy. You have this beautiful facility sitting right next door, but unless you've reserved that ahead of time, you don't have access to it.
Yeah.
So that would be one scenario.
I just, that field is so isolated. Unlike the high school, there always seems to be activity or something going on. I'm just concerned, given that field is just put in, that we need to have, if we're gonna open it, we need to have an attendant there. We need to be checking to make sure that they've got a resident ID card and that they're signing a release to use the field, which is, I think we require everyone that goes into our community center and uses the basketball courts or other recreation facilities to sign a release.
Do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I've had complaints that we've invested in that and we're not opening up to the community, and only a very special elite group of people are able to use it. Now, define that however you want to define it. I understand we need to be sensitive. I kind of agree with Councilor Cobb here. I mean, we've made an investment. If it's worth the departments, if you think it's worth it, it would be great if you could have some hours on it and just sort of see how it's utilized. Maybe try it. I mean, it's all about, I would think it's all about trying to get people to use the department and use the field. It kind of like kills me when you drive by a pool that we've just put $1 million in. We drive by this facility, we put $1 million and people can't use it. It would just be really great if we can find a way. And as far as I remember, that turf field has always been open in the high school. But you're right, it's a little bit more
Yeah, I do wanna emphasize that there's constantly, whether there's teachers or after-school programming or something, there's always somebody coming and going out of those buildings. And there's always some type of maintenance staff or somebody they may be in the buildings, but it's somebody accessible that can be outside quickly. So I mean, I have no issues with expanding and trying to do, using it on a test trial to see how it works on open turf times. But I think that we're much different from the high school in the aspect of they're right behind the school where they're constantly getting action. And it's a lot harder for somebody to go in there and try to vandalize somebody when there's a lot of people and whatnot, but I'm open to the suggestion.
Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So I know that sometimes I love the rec center. By the way, I'll go down there very frequently to work out and walk around the track. And I know that sometimes some people are not as engaging. And I know that you were just talking about wait times or like reserving. So if someone reserves the basketball court, right? Is there like a time limit towards like if that person doesn't show up, someone else can use the basketball court? Or is it just reserved for that whole amount of time? Like, is there like, okay, well, is there a 15-minute cutoff period? Like, you're not here in 15 minutes, somebody else is open for the public.
Yeah, good question. Well, most of the time, if somebody's reserving this space, they're paying for it. So, if they're coming, I haven't had, in my experience, somebody pay for, a gym space and then not show up. I mean, it'll just become open gym time at that point. But 9 times out of 10, if you're paying for something, you're showing up for it. So they're paying for the time and the space that they're getting in the gym. That makes sense, yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, if they don't show up, then it would just revert back to open gym space and whatnot.
Okay, but they can like reserve like time for the basketball court or any other like recreational sport, and then after their time limit has gone, other people that would like to use it will be able to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we've spoken briefly about this, but just a quick overview of the Senior Transportation Connection. This comes up as we have our own in-house drivers. Can you give us an overview of current capabilities, number of drivers, vans, hours, and then if we are still limited in what we can offer, and if you see additional demand or a need that the Senior Transportation Connection would be helpful in filling. So let's just walk through our capabilities first.
Yeah, so just to give everybody just kind of a real brief summary of our transportation as it sits currently. We currently have 3 van drivers, but only 2 of them, they're all part-timers. And then only 2 of them work on a given day together. So one's always having a day off somewhere, which only allows us to have 2 vans in operation at any time. We're getting ready to offer a position for another van driver here, which would give us a 4th van driver, because last year we purchased a 3rd van. So right now we have 3 vans, but only 2 of them can be operational at a time because we only have 2 drivers that work at a time. So what we're gonna be doing is hiring a 4th van driver, so we will have 3 drivers working on a day and every day, Monday through Friday. We'll have 3 vans in operation, which will be able to expand our senior transportation offerings. We have explored different things such as Senior Transportation Connection. They're a great organization with great, programming. They're very, very expensive, very expensive. So what we decided to do is we're going to give this a shot of hiring a new person to open up our what we can offer. and see how this works. And at that point, if we still can't fulfill the needs of our residents, which we feel that we can by bringing on another van driver and putting 3 vans in operation compared to 2, then we'll further expand the opportunities of like senior transportation connection. But we feel like we can take care of that in-house right now with putting a 3rd van into operation.
Couple follow-up and then I'll come to you. Hours and days, is it every day?
It's Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Typically, and it's on a schedule by schedule basis. So you call and you schedule a ride. We try to keep it within the hours of like 8 to 4 or 9 to 4, but we do expand out of those hours depending on if you have a doctor's appointment or something like that. But we do doctor's appointments and we do grocery store, trips as well too.
Is that it though? Medical, grocery, or is it kind of open for all errands?
Right now, it's just medical and grocery, food transportation.
And then is there a geographic limitation?
Yeah, we try not to go, as it sits right now, we try not to go outside of a 7-mile radius. But like I said, with adding a 3rd van into our fleet on any given day, we could start to open up that 7 miles further up. Like for example, I know like quite a few, I can't say quite a few, but some of our seniors, they like to go to Ahuja. This hopefully adding a 3rd van would, right now, since that sits outside of the 7 miles, we don't go there. But we would hopefully be able to like serve some of those people as long as we kind of like tag team. We're not going to just make a trip just for one person, but if we could tag team 3-4 people going out that far, then it'll make it worth our while. And that's what the 3rd van is kind of going to hope that we expand our.
And do you see if the addition of that 3rd van will allow you to expand the service area? Do you also think it will allow you to expand either number served or during those same hours, or an expansion of the hours as well? How are you thinking about that?
I don't think an expansion of the hours just
Okay,
because.
just be able to serve more people in that time.
Correct. Most doctor's appointments are
Sure.
business hours anyhow. I mean, there's very little need to go outside of regular business hours for our seniors. Now, not saying that we can't, but I don't think that there would be a need for it. It's just going to be a matter of going a little bit further to places and then offering, more people, which would naturally will pick up more people because right now, some of our seniors are finding other transportation because we don't service that far.
Sure.
So by us opening up our radius a little bit, we'll be picking up more seniors as well too.
Mr. Fuda?
Thanks. So the demand is there now, I think, right? So for that
That's why.
3rd van.
Mhm.
And the senior transportations, what do they call associates or whatever?
Connection.
Connection, sorry.
Mhm.
They're the ones that go out further than we do, right?
Mhm.
And that's probably why it's more money.
No, not necessarily. They charge on a per trip basis. Most of their trips, whether you're going 5 miles or whether you're going 12 miles,
Oh,
it's normally the same rate unless you're going like an extended distance. We have a great relationship with the people over at Senior Transportation Connection. Laura over there has been fantastic in our communications back and forth. But like I said, they've given us pricing and presentations. I mean, and the next closest like to us is like for example, Lakewood. And Lakewood uses Senior Transportation Connections, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in transportation. So it gets very pricey.
My understanding is it can be a great option for cities that don't have an in-house capacity to do this, but since we're doing a lot of that in-house,
Right.
it feels like we can lean into that. And then
Yeah.
if we max out and we aren't meeting the demand, then we can potentially explore that.
Yeah, and it's a great way to put it, because I think that we can put a couple bucks into the budget specifically for something that we can't service, but I think the majority of it we're gonna be able to service by expanding our fleet.
Anything else on Last topic, I wanna talk about the Parks Recreation Open Spaces Master Plan, just kind of overview of where we are in the process and how can council as well as the public engage with the plan ahead of publication. So we had one open house a month or two ago, it was well attended. I don't believe council has had an update or an overview of the plan other than what's been open to the public. So wanna talk through where the consultants are and then if they will be coming to council or to this meeting or something similar. But basically, how can we get involved ahead of final publication?
Yeah, so they're close. They have been in touch. I don't know if you've responded, but they've sent you emails regarding trying to get a time where they can come present to council and get council's feedback.
Okay.
That's come from Jeremy Hinty of OHM Partners. So if you wanna look back at your emails and stuff like that and get a hold of him. But they fully do plan on having an engagement session with city council specifically. And then I think that their overall plan now is to retouch all of the focus groups that they've already touched, just to reach out to them and say, hey, we've done all of our stuff and this is kind of our findings that we found specifically to your focus group. And then they're going to be presenting something to us, I believe, middle to end of April. And they plan on having the plan finalized sometime in May.
When you say they plan on presenting to us, is that Parks and Rec, or is that,
To the administration.
okay?
Yeah.
Would that be at a council meeting? Or that would be internal?
I would probably guess that we would probably do an internal one first and then bring something before city council, like more of a formal presentation.
Okay.
I would assume that the internal administration one would be more informal and then they would bring probably a formal presentation.
Final recommendations.
Yeah.
President Kuda, would you want that presentation in terms of still gathering information to happen in this meeting? I think
Committee for now.
yeah. We'll invite, everyone who wants to attend and be involved. So then I'll follow up with you and Jeremy to schedule that, potentially at the next one in a month.
Sounds good.
Councilor Posh?
It's gonna be too late if it's a month. I mean, part of the issue is talking to stakeholders and, I would think council is a stakeholder. But if they're already coming up with their conclusions, it would be really hard to have a conversation with them and, if we were to throw them a curveball, for example, how would they be able to, accommodate something?
I would recommend trying to pull something together sooner, maybe having another one in 2 weeks or something like that, just another committee meeting in 2 weeks. And Jeremy would be able to give you a good timeline and like, hey, a month is not, we're okay,
Yeah.
or no, we need to move it up
Okay.
sooner.
Okay, then I'll connect with him. Our next one, it's gonna be 5 weeks from today.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know, April 6th, as far as committee of the whole is booked up. That's why I was,
Yeah, I think if we want it to be a longer discussion where,
Yeah,
council
you
can
have to do
discuss, be better to do it here. Okay, well then I will reach out with Jeremy, and we'll figure out a time, but we'll try to do it sooner than later.
But they are moving forward with a lot of things and it's starting to take shape and it's fun to see.
Have they already looped back with some of the other stakeholders, or is that still coming?
They just started their second round with the stakeholders of not another engagement session, but kind of presenting their findings of those specific stakeholder groups,
Okay, and they're not planning another open house?
not to my understanding.
Tom, do you happen to know if they've reached out to the advisory board?
I haven't heard, but I probably wouldn't, to be honest.
They may be they may be planning to attend one of those upcoming meetings at which, we could potentially double that up.
I believe they met with them in November
They
briefly.
did, but then if they're doing a second round, and potentially what we could do is just combine that with this meeting,
That'd be a good idea.
use that time. But anyway, I'll gather information from Jeremy and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Any other thoughts or topics? Okay, with that, I will conclude this meeting. Thank you.